Teleshikues të Al UK TV, mirë mbrëma, mirë se vini tek emisioni Zeri Diaspores. Kam kënaqësinë që për ju sonte do ua sjell zonjën Sonja Biserko, njohëse mirë çështjes së Ballkanit, Evropës në përgjithësi, politikave, gjeopolitikave dhe të drejtave të njeriut, meqenëse se është presidente e Komitetit të Helsinkit për drejtat njeriut në Serbi, dhe drejt për nga Beogradi do të bashkë bisedojmë të në lidhje me shumë çështje që kanë të bëjnë, e sidomos me dinamikën e bisedimeve që tashmë është mbi këshirën edhe vëmendja e Shteteve Bashkuara të Amerikës dhe Shteteve Evropiane është e fokusuar jashtëzakonisht në përmbylljen e problemit të Kosovës me Serbinë. Një herë mirë shpresojmë që kjo do të ndodhë në mënyrën më të mirë, më të marrë që është e mundshme. Madam Biserko, thank you so much for joining us and helping us to understand a bit more of what's going on in the Balkans, especially between Serbia and Kosovo with recent dialogue, knowing that you are kind of an encyclopedia of information of what had happened and how did we came to this point that actually we have to sit down and maybe have to come to some kind of agreements. Monitored and mediated by United States and some of the countries in Europe?
Well, first of all, I have to go back 10 years or so back when these negotiations looked rather successful after the Brussels Agreement. But very soon after that, 2015 or 16, they started to, behind the back, to sort of broke the deal on the partition of Kosovo, and they almost succeeded. So Angela Merkel stopped it in 2019, and since then there were no negotiations. There was nothing. So, and then with this new context, international context, Ukraine war, Russian aggression, and so on, things have completely changed. First of all, the security framework of Europe, and with the Americans and Biden administration stepping in, things started to change. Over the last year, obviously this strategy, which is now visible and understandable for all of us, was in preparation. They sent here one of the most, how should I say, skillful diplomats, Christopher Hill, who is apparently slowly moving and pushing this strategy behind the scene. And obviously American aim and EU now is to sort of close down the Balkan issue after all these years. And they will do it obviously very successfully because the pressure that is going on now is something that neither Belgrade or Pristina can resist. We had 3 delegations, both in Pristina and here, over the last 2 weeks. One was American delegation. We had the Pentagon representative in the delegation, which is not usual. He was here obviously because of the Wagner group roaming around the region, and this is very great security concern. Secondly, there was a meeting of Vučić with regional German ambassadors here in Belgrade. There was no word of neither of these 2 meetings in the media. And then we had the 3rd delegation, 5 of them, who came up with this proposal, which was very much talked about over the last few months. Some parts of it were leaking into the media, but now it's quite known what they want, and they want it in 2 months' time. So there is not much time neither for Pristina or Belgrade to sort of manipulate or to resist this agreement. This is something that will be done, whether they want it or not. Therefore, the proposal, as what I grasped from what I've seen in the media, I think is acceptable. Of course, Kosovo is concerned with the association of Serbian municipalities, but this is something to be negotiated, because we know from the very beginning that Belgrade always wanted partition of Kosovo. There is no other option here, though Belgrade very often, not often, on daily basis since aggression in Ukraine, they use the argument of the integrity of Serbia and Ukraine, and they are blaming international community how they have double standards, but in fact Serbia cannot and will not ever accept Kosovo with majority of Albanians, 90 and more so. So therefore this is only an argument for the partition, which I think is not possible anymore. It's off the agenda. Therefore, what they can get is some kind of association, which was already agreed on in 2015. It is now the matter what kind of association it will be. Of course, Belgrade would like to have it as a Republika Srpska status, and of course, Kosovo cannot accept it because it would make Kosovo a dysfunctional state. What can they do now? They can use all the arguments, their constitution, their law on decentralization, and also Albanian community in the south of Serbia, and to sort of come up with some kind of compromise. Each side will have to compromise, but what is important is really to avoid this concept of ethnification of the North and sort of allowing Belgrade to get away with this Republika Srpska status. Once it is settled, I think the region will slowly start to move forward. Bosnia will be affected with that, and the whole region, I would say, Montenegro, because as long as Russia is present, Serbia has, how should I say, a supporter for all they ask. After all, the Serbian world, so-called unification and liberation of Serbs in the region, is something that came, that emerged after Russians infiltrated in the Balkans in 2013 or 14, similar to their own program or project Russian World. So when this disappears from the political scene, things will develop slowly, but still they will have, how should I say, one more push in a positive way. And obviously EU and Americans, they not only that they push this agreement, there is also a whole program behind that small mini Marshall Plan and so on. It's not yet public, it's not transparent what they have in their hands. But anyway, they understand now that they have to close down the Balkan issue because it affects their security as well, both American and European. American because it's the south wing of NATO there, which would then spill over to, you know, the entire region.
To the rest of the country, yeah.
Yeah, and Europeans, there are too many security issues which come across our region, starting from trafficking, starting from migrants and so on. So there are too many concerns for both, and they have to really close it, and Russians know that. We still don't know how they will react. There is no official reaction from Russia's side on this proposal, which is on the table now quite openly, and Vučić 2 days ago addressed the nation and said, I'm under pressure, I have to do it because otherwise they will introduce sanctions, they will withdraw their investments, 100,000 people will be in the street and so on. So he fully understood what is coming up in case he doesn't accept this proposal.
We followed up the Vučić address to the nation, and I think it was quite a big of the U-turn of what he have said until now, and then certainly on his meeting, on his address to the nation, it was completely different way of expressing the pressure and crisis to the nation rather than what he used to do before. Do you think he's capable and able to actually deliver what is required from the European Union and United States, what they requested by German-French plan that they requested it?
Well, Vučić already started to develop action throughout the country through his party, which is very obedient and subordinated to him. Once when he threatened in a meeting that he would resign, they immediately supported everything that he would sign now. And this is ongoing. Now we are waiting for media to change because there are some voices, isolated voices from his party, saying people who say we belong to Europe and Euro-Atlantic integrations and so on. So this is for the first time they say that. It's a complete U-turn, as you say, but they can do it because last 10 years he intoxicated the public and media sphere to such an extent that people believe everything he says. And this is the problem, because over the last years, he managed to destroy completely political life in Serbia, institutions, media scene, and everything. And he's the only one who arbitrates in every situation. He's asked for everything. And this is And of course, he is responsible for all this because the Russians came in, because he encouraged them, he opened the doors for them. They are present very deeply in this society through Serbian Orthodox Church, security services, culture, academia, and so on. So it won't be so easy to just cut them off. And we have, after all, 200,000 Russians who refugees since the war started. Not all of them are anti-Putin, obviously. And of course, Wagner Group is going around freely. Nobody is really caring about it. There was even an advertisement in one of their public media outlets, Russia Today, calling Serb citizens to register for the war in Ukraine. And they have already been there since 2014. And then Vucic's reaction was, please don't call on our citizens to join because we have the law which forbids that and so on. It was a very mild sort of statement, whereas they should all be, charged at the court because this is illegal what they do. You know, the Russian embassy, the Russian media outlets, and nationalistic groups throughout Serbia, which are apparently created by Vucic. He lowered census for the parliament, 3%, so they all are now members of the parliament as well, some of them. And this is his creation. So he's really responsible for that. Now he has to dismantle all of this and then pursue the line, European line, which is on the table for so long. Serbia has decided, opted for Europe already in 2003. And since then, it is 20 years now, we haven't gone too far. The reforms that are necessary are stalled. You know, not one chapter was opened during the last year and year before, because they were engaged and they were hoping that Serbian world would be possible. Last year, when Russians started the aggression, there was an idea that Republika Srpska declares its independence. They all thought that Russia would finish it just for a week or 2 weeks. But as they failed, the agenda changed. But they are still, the Republika Srpska leadership, especially Dodik, who is the major exponent of Russian policy here, he's still talking about independent Republika Srpska and so on. There was this 9th of January illegal date, national day of the Republika Srpska. They call it as a state, which is only entity. And there was a defile of armed policemen, and also Wagner Group participated in that. It was really a provocation, and they awarded Putin, which is also something unimaginable in the situation which Europe is in, that you award a man who is deploying such kind of, war policy against the civilians in Ukraine. It's unimaginable that such thing would happen here in the Balkans. And after all, this behavior of Serbia will have its price later on with Baltic countries, with Poland and Czech Republic and others who are paying high price of having all these migrants in their countries, and Serbia here is pretending to be neutral. It's neutral on the Russian side, I would say. So it's something that cannot be tolerated any longer. And so they are now exposed to such a pressure from the United States and the EU that finally he had to accept it, or at least that's what he said 2 days ago. And now he's lobbying throughout the country to get support for it.
Do you think the opposition have any power or any say on all this kind of U-turn or all these changes that are happening so rapidly that sometimes if you're talking within 2 months' time, it's very short period of time to actually bring up the ideas and ways to implement what is required from European Union, United States?
What is he hoping? That's what I understood from his address 2 days ago, that Albin Kurti he will reject the proposal because of the association of municipalities. But I hope he will not do that. Even if he does, Americans will proceed with this proposal and push Kosovo to sign it. So it's not, they are really playing now very sort of positive sort of role. Dacic, foreign minister, went to Brussels, promised to be very how cooperative on this. So, and I think they can do it because opposition is not an alternative in Serbia. They all criticizing him for that, which is absolutely, how should I say, so not political at the moment. When I would say this historical momentum is apparently has accelerated history in this region now. You know, it's something that they cannot control. It's something beyond their power. Where they can say whatever they want. They won't be the ones who will decide about it, and they don't understand that.
How is the media in all this kind of helping at all? Considering that I think the media wasn't that much of the comfortable to say what they think until now.
Well, media, of course, was very instrumental to Vučić and his, how to say, way of conducting this country, ruling this country. All major media are under his control. All national TVs with national frequency are under his control, and also most of the tabloids. So he can easily make a turn, and it's slowly coming up. Informer, which is the most toxic tabloid, now has already come with the article that Aleksandar Vučić proved to be a statesman because he understands everything and he's apparently working in the interest of the Serb nation. So, I mean, you already have the language changed, and as I said, all these local, how should I say, affiliations of the Srpska napredna stranka are already lobbying for that. So there is no way that he can get away with that. Of course, some of them will ask for the referendum. He will go to the parliament. He will organize all kinds of, how should I say, performances in order to prove, to sort of gain this support. And there will be these voices from the opposition, maybe even from these extreme groups, but they're also under his control. So it only depends whether Russia will push them for more extreme stand. So we don't know what Russia is going to say because there is not yet an official response to that.
How much pressure was have been put recently to Serbia to actually get the sanctions against Russia as soon as they...
Well, this is something which is on the table since February last year, because this is apparently part of this approximation agenda to sort of follow the EU foreign policy line, which apparently Serbia does only 45%, which is not enough. And, you know, there is a big pressure from the EU, especially European Parliament, to sort of to be more strict to Serbia. They even adopted a resolution which is now trying to sort of undermine Varhelyi, the Commissioner for Enlargement, who was reporting in a very positive way about Serbia, whereas Serbia did nothing over the last few years in terms of approximation and reforms which are necessary for the EU membership. But of course, many of the critics here, they claim that Serbia will not be the member of the EU for who knows how long, not only Serbia, but the Western Balkans. That might be true, but on the other side, you know, EU came up with certain proposals which can integrate certain spheres which are up to the European standards, which is the way to go through. But the problem is that regional cooperation, which is one of the major priorities of the EU in relation to the Western Balkans, hasn't been, how should I say, constructed. So regional cooperation is the key. We could see last few days or weeks this opening up between Croatia and Serbia. Their relations, politically and diplomatically speaking, were non-existent over the 10 years since naprednjaci came into power. Now we had a visit of the foreign minister, Dačić, to Zagreb, the Orthodox Christmas, and the two met in Davos, Plenković and Vučić. So it is more than a hint. And obviously, I think one of the American representatives mentioned that this is now real potentially developing this cooperation. We, for the first time, have a Minister for Human Rights who is of Croatian background. So there are certain, obviously, Ambassador Hill was working hard behind the scene. So certain steps are now, or certain steps forward are now maybe more promising, I would say.
Understand how much it has been involved, the Orthodox Church, on all this kind of all those years in kind of influencing the Serbian people into the directions that maybe politics has been kind of requesting it.
Orthodox Church is active, politically speaking, since 80s. Milosevic very much used it, especially in mobilizing Serb emotions on the Second World War atrocities in Croatia and Bosnia. And during the war, they were very much close to all kinds of paramilitaries, and they were a very, how should I say, important pillar in all this, in this implementation of this Milosevic's policy. And on the other hand, Serbian Orthodox Church never recognized republic borders in the former Yugoslavia. So they say wherever Serbs live, this is part of the Serbian state. So therefore, they are one of the torchbearers of this program, Serbian World, in the neighboring states like Bosnia and Montenegro. And there are a few documents which are relevant and on the site of the government, like Strategy for Diaspora, where church has a major role. Where they say if there is no church, Serbs disappear and their identity is sort of prone to disappear. Second, there is also strategy charter on cultural space, Serbian cultural space, which is signed by the Serbian education minister and Republika Srpska education minister, which apparently means that Serbs are not, it's not the state policy for Serbia, the cultural space, but for all Serbs in the region. And therefore it means that they obstruct the integration in the societies they live in, like in Bosnia, like in Montenegro, also Kosovo. So this is one, how should I say, very ethnically focused agenda, I mean, policy, cultural policy, and also the strategy for culture in Serbia itself is also along the same lines. It's, it's based on the victimhood of Serbs throughout centuries. We are not responsible for anything, therefore we are only victims. So this is some kind of victimhood nationalism, which apparently prevents the nation to modernize, because you have to take up some kind of responsibility in order to be able to pursue the values which are on the agenda for the membership in the EU. So this is, how should I say, there are many other, how should I say, policies within this cultural policy, which is very important to note, because culture was used to mobilize Serbs for the project, Milosevic project, already in the 70s. So when you mobilize people on certain ideas, ethnic ideas, it's in this multi-ethnic state Yugoslavia, suddenly you have one nation focusing only on its ethnos. So this was throughout 80s, as the Academy had issued this memorandum and so on. So it's quite how to say, important to know that culture was in the function of this war project and is now still instrumentalized for preserving this project and to wait for new context, new international context, when we would be able to, how to say, finalize our aspirations. As they thought it would be with the Russian support, which is now apparently failing in this whole adventure in Ukraine. So they thought it was time. And, Dugin, Alexander Dugin, also one of the Russian ideologues, also extremely fascist one, I would say, who was very present here in Serbia, quite frequently was visiting Belgrade, lecturing, and he was very much quoted in our press, in our periodicals, and also in academia. So it's, it was coming up, but I'm afraid in EU and the United States didn't pay attention to that. They were mostly involved on the political level with the government and those who sort of decide, but when we talk about the public opinion and all that, academia, media, Serbian Orthodox Church is extremely effective in this. So Serbian Orthodox Church has one very, very radical line, which is pro-Russian. Most of them are also, but Porfiry is very close to Vučić, so obviously he will be someone who will help change this optic where we are heading to, sort of European integrations and so on. So it's they can easily manipulate public opinion, which they were creating all these years. So it's
manipulate. You mean like redirecting it, the information, everything being given
it's really
to.
A matter of time. They need few weeks. They will all. And you know, one very important fact is that many people leave the region, as you know, and they all leave to Western countries. They don't go to Russia. So this is some kind of schizophrenia. You know, on one side, emotionally, you are pro-Russian, keep side of Russia in this war and so on. On the other side, you send your children, not only children, also people of 50 years old.
So to say, brain drain in a way, I think it's fleeing whole Balkans.
Yes.
What do you think? I mean, there was an interesting issue that was raised by head of the church, of the Orthodox Church, after they would not allow access in Kosovo. That he said that, to my remembering, said that Serbs in Kosovo was 15 centuries ago, when Albanians are 5 centuries ago. What kind of message sent this kind of historic information that I'm not sure that are accurate?
Time, you know, it is Turks who were there for the longest time, I would say. It was their occupation for 400 years, or I don't know. So, I mean, these arguments are not really, how should I say, useful to use in totally different contexts. Albanians are majority there and have been majority over the last century, and now they are 90, I don't know how many %. So this is, if you don't want to, and this was the case, if you don't want Albanians in your state, they have full right to sort of go on their own way, because if you are not able to control your territory in a decent way and respect the equality and human rights of the others, then of course things take to a completely different direction. And
not to go into history so much, but it's known that the Illyrians are like for thousands of years there, and Albanians are Illyrian descent. So it means that they kind of definitely their history. It's, if we look at history, which is not time for it.
But migration is something which is present throughout the history. And maybe tomorrow, we have already 10,000 Turkish workers here. I don't know how many Pakistani in India. Some of them will stay here. Like in Europe, you have how many Albanians, Serbs, Bosniaks. So this is a constant process. It is only the matter of how you integrate them. What is the concept of integration?
It was just an interesting thing to say, although after all this kind of the movements that are happening recently under severe pressure, at least from what I remember, I was 10-year-old when 1981 unrest in Kosovo started for better rights for students to continue then to use this anti-Albanian propaganda by Yugoslavia since then. Now we're talking about 40, 50 years. How long is going to take to build the relation back to normality between Albanian and Serbs, considering that constantly, to what I remember, at that time was in Serbian media especially, was constantly first 10, 15 minutes of anti-Albanian campaign?
Well, I'm in Kosovo now for 30 years regularly. We have written so many reports about Serbs in Kosovo and have been in all remote villages and enclaves. We talk to many Serbs, and the problem is that Serbs in Kosovo are instrumentalized by Belgrade. Belgrade prevents the integration and the dialogue inside the Kosovo. So, and this is a big problem, of course, for them, because they depend on them. They pay them. They get their salaries in the educational system, healthcare system, and so on. So, but there are many examples. This is what I came across all these years, where people cooperate, but nobody is really exposing it to the public because it's not popular. It's only negative examples. Like, you know, many Serbs go for holidays to Croatia, but they pick up only incidents. If if it happens, or if not, they invent. And, you know, there are thousands of Serbs working along the coast in catering, like cooks and so on, and they don't care what Vučić says. Vučić is constantly saying, don't go there, I'm not going there, so on. I'm giving you a voucher to spend holidays here in Serbia. Doesn't help. People are fed up with that. So, for example, you have certain areas in Kosovo where Serbs and Albanians live, you know, along each other, and it's some kind of normal life. Had there been more positive input from Belgrade and media-wise, and you know, Albanian media is more vibrant, it's more pluralistic than here in Serbia. And of course, there are also many Albanians studied abroad, they come back, and it's a very, how should I say, vibrant society, because, you know, when you have this kind of pressure, this is a reaction to it. I don't know how long it will last, but at this point, the Kosovo society is the most vibrant society in the region, even more than in Tirana and all that. So it's, we all have to work on that. We have lots of projects dealing with the Kosovo youth and Serbian youth. So this is in the process. It's not visible yet, but these people network, they cooperate. And so when we take young people to Kosovo, they, you know, always surprised to see how Pristina is sort of vibrant, dynamic, how many restaurants, how many things are going on the cultural scene and so on. So it is really something that we all have to work on. It's not just to sit down and wait what Vučić would do or anyone else from this how should I say, nationalistic side. So, and I think many people are really, how should I say, fed up with this nationalistic ethics.
Constantly mentality pressure. Well, within Kosovo is small. Movements are kind of influenced by external forces, in this case by Serbian government, to keep up the tension there due to the political agendas. What my most kind of question that I'd like to raise is, there was Drešković, to my knowledge, said that raised the question what Serbs they don't know, and then he started kind of explaining of how the war in Bosnia went, how the war in Kosovo, how severe the pressure was on Kosovo Albanians since 1981, and so on. Can you tell me, on the ground there in Serbia, what is their impression? I'm talking about normal civilians. What is their impression about Kosovo Albanians? Do they think that there is a way to actually start communicating after all this kind of propaganda? That one side was how Albanians were not good for anything and actually are against us, and certainly all the crimes that happen within Kosovo, hiding behind the curtains, and constantly said in Serbia and Serbian media that actually was some kind of fight against terrorists.
Yeah, but this is problem of our society, Serbia. So we have to come to the point where we have to acknowledge new reality in the region and our responsibility for the collapse of Yugoslavia and the war crimes that have happened in the name of Serb nation. And also, you know, all these war criminals already sentenced to come back to Serbia, become public figures. They are lecturers at certain, you know, institutes, faculties. They explain what has happened in Croatia, Bosnia, and Kosovo. So this has to be out. And I'm afraid EU didn't, they tolerated that. You have all these, you know, murals around Serbia, not only in Belgrade, Ratko Mladic, and now you have also Russians, and there this Wagner group and so on. So this has to be stopped. It is really, the problem with this transitional justice in the region is that EU and the Western community, they sort of were focused on pressuring Serbia, especially on extraditing war criminals to The Hague, and Serbia considered that it was finished once they sent the last war criminal there, Ratko Mladic and Karadzic. They thought, and they still think, it's finished. And in the meantime, they undermine everything that has been achieved in the Hague Tribunal. They destroy its legacy, and they say it's sort of anti-Serb, and they now go into all kinds of analyses and publishing books and organizing all kinds of roundtables, which are apparently annulling the work of the Hague Tribunal. And this is, I think, the biggest problem of the EU and in general international community, not only in our case, how to put pressure on the state to accept all these findings in the Hague Tribunal or any other international tribunal, like they did, for example, in Germany. It also took decades before they started to face up the past. But the state was pressured to sort of keep the line. You always have these neo-Nazi groups in every country, and they will always exist. But it really matters how the state is behaving. If you let go impunity, if you don't really, if you tolerate this, the war criminals and all that, then there is no facing the past. If they are heroes, if they sacrifice for the Serbian national interest, so why would they sort of face the past? It's easier to think that we are the victims and that they were saving us than to think that we are responsible and the crimes that we have committed are really kept under the carpet. It's something that is not talked about. For example, our prosecutor for war crimes, the actual prosecutor, in her letter of intent, she said she would focus on the crimes against Serbs. So there is not one single case relating to any other, case like Albanians, the crimes committed against Albanians especially, or Croats or Bosniaks. So, and there is no cooperation on the regional level between the prosecutor office. At one point it was rather sort of going on quite well, but since naprednjaci came into power, it all stopped. So this is something that I hope. I don't know how things will be developing in terms of these issues which are relevant for Serbia's modernization, Europeanization, because it's not possible without clearing the past issues, especially recent ones, because it affects relations with every neighbor. Serbia, they talk about regional reconciliation, but this is not possible as long as Serbia doesn't face itself. It has to look into the mirror and say, okay, we did this, but then now let's see what we can do about it. There is a lot of talk about reconciliation in the region only for 20 years, but we didn't make any progress in this respect. Everybody is embedded in its own position of a victim. I mean, to some extent, everybody was a victim, but it's not the only, especially in our case, we are not some Serbs, refugees who were pushed by Belgrade to leave. They are victims also of that. And many people here who live in a very, very poor lives because of the price that this society has paid for this war policy. But you have to be aware, this society, who started it and why. You have to make people understand what are the errors and mistakes of this kind of policy and where it takes you. We can now see where we are. So I think there is a lot of things that have to be dealt with here in Serbia, and I hope it will be possible maybe in the time to come. But on the other side, Serbia is empty. Many people, relevant people, left the country. So there is a lack of professional people in every sphere. Medical workers leave, doctors, all kinds of professionals leave the country. All those who think that can find a job abroad. And of course, Western Europe is also lacking workforce, and they easily absorb people from the Balkans.
Considering that, based on some signs, there is incapability of Serbian Court of Justice to actually bring the criminals to the justice in the fair way that expected by international community. Do you think that something can be initiated similar to Special Court of Justice for Kosovo individuals?
Special Court of Justice?
There was a setup for Kosovo based on Marty.
Okay. Yeah, well, this was forced out because I think EULEX and the KFOR missed the opportunity to sort of do something in Kosovo after 2000 because they were in control of judiciary system, not Albanians. And somehow they were not successful in that. And this was a way of appeasing to Serbia. This court is set up. Obviously, there are no cases which are referring to Dick Marty's accusations about organ trafficking and some other things. It's obviously something, as I understand, I'm not fully following it, but occasionally I read something, it's more focused on inter-Albanian, how should I say, not conflict, but revenge, one side or the other. So I don't know how it will finish. We don't have any judgment so far, so it will take time, obviously. It's since 2015 or 16 that the court was installed. We didn't see any judgments yet. So what will come out of it, I don't know. But of course, there was a missed opportunity to have it addressed at a time when all other crimes were addressed, because but now local courts are not like in Serbia, are not too successful. Somehow it is dragging and will be dragging in the future. Now for Kosovo, I don't know. It's really I don't know what they have at disposal, how many evidence they have, who are the witnesses. We still don't know about it. I myself was not very much involved in following that. I know I was involved when it was put in place. I had also some kind of, how should I say, reflection on that, because Serbia was working very hard and had engaged in a very systematic propaganda against the Kosovars at the time when this Dick Marty's report was released. This organ trafficking really affected the process of recognition of Kosovo at that time. And you know, I don't know whether you have followed it, our prosecutor, he himself was involved in that without any proofs. And then you had this commission led by Clint Williamson, an American judge who was in The Hague, and people from the commission who were working on that for 3 years, I think, or so. And in that report, there was they didn't have any evidence for organ trafficking, but there was some evidence which related to these killings among Albanians. So it's, I don't know.
To my knowledge, based on the Dick Marty's kind of report, there was not found anything that sufficient to actually find evidence that there was any trafficking. But what my question, Madam Biserko, my question was, if Serbia as a country, it's incapable of creating a justice that actually can take the war crimes to the court and fairly treating them, do you think that the international community will intervene and kind of request from them to have something similar to the Special Court of Justice of Kosovo?
Yeah, but Serbia is unwilling to engage in that. That's the problem. Well, we'll see when if they, and I hope they will, sign this proposal, and how the things will be developing onward and in relation between the two. At one point, it depends also on the political elite, which will overtake after Vučić, because Vučić was part of Milošević machinery, of course, his party. I think it is fair enough to have him sign this proposal and not someone else, because they were part of everything that was going on. And but I don't think he can be a factor of promoting transitional justice. I don't believe in that. So it really has to wait for a new elite to come to be able to address this, I would say, criminal past of Serbia in the 90s. So this is also a problem of the society itself, academia, media, culture. It's not only the court. The court is very important, and it can go on for long. Like it did in Germany, you know, it's, they had international court, but they also had local courts, which were willing and unwilling. But somehow the society at one point reacted, especially young people in '68, and there was a historian dialogue. So this may come. We are too small society without potential, but might come. For example, my organization is engaged in a project on history on Yugoslavia, because without understanding Yugoslavia and what has happened, I don't think we can understand each other, because this mess that was created, you have to understand who started it, why, and so on. So we are carrying on this already for 10 years. We published 2 volumes, Yugoslavia from historical perspective, and the second Yugoslavia from 80 to 90, and now we are going to sort of prepare a 3rd volume dealing with the period from 90 to 2000, and we have about 50 historians from the whole region. It's a regional project. It's not so this can be basis for something. It's very much quoted, cited all over. We have this how to say. We have information how much it is used, and so on. So it is the process. I know we who lived here from the very beginning and tried to change, we very often feel frustrated because it doesn't go that quickly. You know, it's something that takes generations, and also depends on the will of the political elite, and it depends also on the character of the changes. So our changes in 2000 were also problematic because democratic opposition, most of it were nationalists. We can see today in our opposition. So it has to sort of to give birth to new political elites which will be able to sort of address this issue, which is painful for any society, but it is too big. Fiasco of Serbian politics, it's very difficult to accept because Yugoslavia, how should I say, covered all Serbs in one state, and now they are sort of reducing, and this is frustration. Okay, but I mean this is the problem of the elites. They have to cope with that, and I think this is important to have in mind that there are always groups, individuals here who voiced against it, or who many evidence, many testimonies are accumulating, not only through the Hague Tribunal, which without Hague Tribunal probably all this documentation wouldn't be accessible yet, but also you have a lot of books, a lot of how should I say, films, and it's not that there is no evidence for all that. It's just a problem of it becoming mainstream. Well, I think it's important that historians get engaged in that and document all these events, and then to have discussions between historians in the schools, in the academia, and also to introduce this into the school textbooks, because our school textbooks are really contaminated with lies and interpretations which are really further sort of nourishing generations with, all this victimhood and so on. So this is a work for generations to come, especially historians, and also for the cultural elite, because younger people, as I can see through working with them, they are much more open to cultural, how should I say, presentation of what has happened. It's more, how should I say, it reaches them, I would say. I think they are fed up with these bare facts of war crimes and so on. I mean, these are generations which are born after the 90s or 2000, which have nothing to do with that, but they have the burden of their parents, so it's not easy for them either. So cultural culture is very important for mobilizing young people for this kind of topics, and which are not easy, but it's one of the ways that can be how should I say, they have to be developed. Yeah, because in all this society we have parallel cultural spheres. One is which is dominating and it is financed by the state, and the other which is liberal, anti-nationalistic, and which is able to address all these issues, and they cooperate in the region-wise. So you have a lot of ongoing cooperation between Kosovo and Serbia, Serbia, Croatia, Serbia, Bosnia, and so on. So the cultural scene is slowly emerging. It's not funded by either of the state because they don't have interest. They are all stuck in this ethnic sort of, how should I say, narratives. But this parallel cultural sphere is coming up. Yes. No, no, these are the projects which we sort of announce them on our site so people apply. So we have people from all over Serbia, from different backgrounds. And I can tell you, even most of them have never been in Kosovo. So once they come there, they're always shocked and surprised. They're also surprised by this openness of younger people in Pristina or Prizren and so on. So, and they network. So we had generations and generations because we always have something with Kosovo, especially younger people. This is our focus, our target group, and it pays out. You know, I mean, we are one of the organizations. There are maybe 2 or 3 others here which also have projects like that, cooperation with Kosovo, especially in the field of culture. So we had project, and we are now going to start a new one on similar lines. How should I say, cooperation of young cultural artists or people who deal with the culture from both sides. It means that they will be coming here in Serbia, and Serbs will go to Kosovo and participate in all kinds of projects which either side is carrying on. And we familiarize them with what is going on. We take them to different institutions, museums, meet people who could be interesting as the lecturers and so on. So this is slowly coming up, but it's not yet visible. Nobody writes about that, but it does exist. So I think we should be a little bit more maybe optimistic. It's not easy, considering how we are all, how should I say, under the pressure of all these narratives, which are, how should I say, absolutely, absolutely. So these ethnic elites, they are in favor of status quo because this, yeah. Well, I can tell you when we take people, whether they're young people or whoever, whatever age, whenever we come down, we have very good reception by ordinary people in the restaurants, in the streets. So I think Albanians want to belong to the region. Serbia is on their way to West or whatever. So it's a kind of necessity. It's not something. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So it is a strong. Yes. No. No. Go on. Yes. Yes. Yeah. I sort of also belong to the regional women lobby, and we are very often in Pristina talking with women on all sides. I also participated in some conferences on relating to the rape of Albanian women. So I heard a lot of testimonies and met a lot of people really with very horrific stories and disturbing. And sometimes you have impression that those who are really victims, they're more open to forgive. They're less radical than those who sit in front of their televisions and sort of follow this national ethnic politics. You know, this is usually related to the politicians or elites close to them. But people who suffered, they don't hate. I didn't come across such examples. They're more, how should I say, open to any kind of communication. But they only want to be acknowledged that they suffered, you know, and this is very important in all these communications with people who underwent all kinds of discrimination or all kinds of suffering. They need to be acknowledged for their pain and for their suffering. Well, altogether, I think, yeah, and we do. Yeah, I agree with you. Yes, and we depend on the funds of EU and some individual countries in Europe because the state here has its own NGOs, mostly for obtaining the finance for themselves. IPA funds go via the state and so on. But I think civic society in all these countries in the region should be really supported to, as you say, to sort of develop field work to such an extent that it matters. It's not enough to have few organizations like we do this work with younger people, which is effective, and we have a lot of proof for that. But it has to be on much wider scale. For the time being, alternative education is much more important because the official one here, it doesn't sort of focus on this plurality, on this the past, which is very important to understand. So their curriculum in the school is very limited. It's very focused on justifying what has been done on the Serbian side. So I think that would be one way to sort of go, because it really depends how society will respond to these issues and how they will react in sort of acknowledging certain things that have been done in their names. So Serbian state is not ready for that yet. So it's very important what we have in the civic society. No, political agenda here is against that, of course. I mean, this is that's why I think the EU should be more, how should I say, engaged in such projects in the region, especially here in Serbia, because you know, nobody can help us deal with the past. Of course, the international community can, to some extent, interfere and help, but it really depends on us what we are able to deliver. Well, I think all these societies were focused on their victims, which is probably, how should I say, normal, which is normal. But I think it's time now to also open up for different communication exchange between these societies. Everything is already registered, and even the number of people who died or who were killed and so on. And this is very important work on all sides because nobody can manipulate with the numbers anymore as they did maybe in earlier Asia periods. But now, and it is thanks to the Hague Tribunal that some, how should I say, things are settled down, like figures, like major, how should I say, crime scenes were taken up in The Hague and very well documented what has happened. So there is no way for manipulation. It really, and you know, this was the war which was really followed by whole world. There are so many evidence, not only in The Hague, but you know, many people were in the field, journalists, you know, photographs, and everything is on the table. I think this is the best, the best evidenced war. So it is really the matter of politics when they will start to use the proper information and proper policy towards the past. Yes. No, I think no, no, Serbia diaspora is not helping this country in any way like Albanian diaspora. But also you have to have in mind that Kosovo, after all this, how should I say, suffering or repression, it's psychological momentum that apparently is playing an enormous role. It's like this energy which comes from this, how should I say, suppression which was there for so long, and which now makes Kosovo society most vibrant society in the region. Many young people were educated abroad. They came back. They speak languages. Belgrade doesn't take this into account because all these people are now part of the administration. You have American university there already for I don't know how many 10 generations are already out from it. Dealing with administration and economy. So this all matters. It's accumulating slowly. And in 10 years' time, it will be a modern state. I think, you know, even foreigners, when they compare Pristina with Belgrade, they say, okay, Belgrade is it is a big city, but Pristina came up from scratches, from nothing for 20 years. And when you follow it, like I do all these years, you cannot avoid a conclusion that it's something extraordinary happening down there. With all the problems, it's society, Kosovo society is not without problems, major problems. You have all this corruption, like in the whole region, but now you have government which is trying to do something with it. No, not other governments in the region do anything about it. So, and you know, this youth is really pushing with their energy, and your cultural scene is very interesting. I very often, whenever I go down, I try to see something and to sort of see what is going on in the city. So I can say it's really modern. Some of its, let's say, plays, they are so sophisticated. So it's a kind of energy. I don't know how long it will last, but it happens, you know, like in some Asian societies. You just have a breakthrough which goes on until one point, I don't know, it depends how long it will last. Yeah, but there is this exchange going on without official policy. You know, during the sanctions, you had Serbian goods all over shops in Kosovo. So it's something that is unstoppable, even in the worst times. So you know, the trade is ongoing. You have all kinds of ways to bypass, you know, obstructions, official obstructions. So this is good because it shows that people. Open for this kind of cooperation. Yeah, I agree with you. So it's, there is a lot of potential in the region, which was not used all these years, because most of the elites were focused on their own interests, not on the interests of the societies. And this is now quite clear, because so many people have become, how should I say, poor. And in all these new countries, as maybe Kosovo lives also on diaspora support more than other societies. And also I can see whenever I go down there a lot of investment which comes from the diaspora, Albanian or diaspora. I've seen many things which were built by people from Western Europe mostly, and also some from America. So this is there is some kind of solidarity which I didn't see in any other of the countries. Once I was down participating in an event where few businessmen from Germany and Switzerland were awarded because they built up about 4,000 flats and houses, solidarity houses and flats for poor people in Kosovo. I have never heard anyone do that in the rest of the region. It was something which surprised me, but it also shows how large solidarity is in the society, in the family, and so on. I Well, I believe that we are heading into this direction, that in 2 months' time we'll have this proposal signed, and that will be the, how should I say, starting point for the region, because Kosovo-Serbia relations were in the heart, and it very much depended how it will be resolved, how the rest of the issues will be resolved in the region, Bosnia, Macedonia, and so on. So if this is resolved, and I think it is going to be, because what I see how Americans and EU is sort of coming together on this very issue, I think it is going to be one of the positive, how should I say, benchmarks for the future of the region. Well, I'm very personal about Alvin Kurti, who I know when he was a teenager. So, and we have been traveling around Ireland to sort of lobby for Kosovo independence. I think he's a new wave of politicians in the region with integrity. He's very smart, intelligent, and I think he should be given a chance, because it's not easily such people come on the surface, because they are very often obstructed by others, and I hope he will make it. Thank you. All the best.